hands together, everybody. Coming to the stage, Mr. Pinchas Levinson. Yes! Keep it clapping for the man.
Okay, thank you. A big hand for David, really. Without him, we'd all be out there just in our own world. But now we're in his world, really. One more for David. Thank you, David. Okay, great. Okay, right, so you guys are having a good time here, I hope, here in Israel. Mostly you're tourists, right? Is that what I see out there? Anybody here? Well, we're not going to ask too many questions tonight. The one question is, does anybody know the Hebrew date? Yeah, see, nobody knows the Hebrew date. Okay, it's the tonight is the 20th of Av, right? You know, the Hebrew calendar is kind of weird. There are all sorts of holidays and there are all sorts of important times, but the hardest time of the year is right now, right? We have Tamuz, Av, and then Elul. Okay. Anyway, so we're presently on the 20th, and there are all sorts of fast days, and there are mourning days. Depending on what brand or stripe you take, there are days when you can go swimming, but you can't enjoy it. There are days when you can go bowling, but you can't wear leather shoes. It's just such a weird time. This whole thing, I don't know. I don't know if you guys are subjected to any of it. Anyway, this week we had the 15th of Av, right? Tu B'Av, right? Which, all the way from way back, time of the Mishnah, it was a day of love, right? So at this point in time, right, there are two types of people who relate to it. You're either single or you're sort of disappointed in the day, right? And if you want to go from single to disappointed, then you make sure you don't forget it. But of course, the 15th of Av, it's sort of connected to St. Valentine's Day, but it's not anti-Semitic, so you can really like it. And of course, the real researchers think that the 9th of Av, right, is a big fast day, I don't know, but they think it's really just a diet day to get ready for the 15th of Av. Anyway, we have a good time here in the Hebrew calendar. We had this week the birthday of our Prime Minister, yes, Shimon Peres, turned... Whoa, thank you, right. Once and would-be Prime Minister, our President, Shimon Peres, thank you. He turned 88, okay. So, he goes to this school, and in Israel, when someone gets a birthday, they put you in a chair, and then they lift you up, each for the number of birthdays you have, right? So they're lifting them up, and they get to 67, right? And the chair falls. Ooh, it really moved me up. Ooh. You didn't want to see that. But they also had this week the PALMACH turning 70, right? Anybody know what the PALMACH is, right? It's this fighting unit, okay? And the most impressive part about it was how well all the Filipino caretakers knew the words to the fighting songs, right? That's the story of Israel getting old. And of course, we had, 2 months ago, we had someone who wasn't going to turn 28, right? Amy Winehouse died. Really a sad story, right? Jewish girl from London. But of course, the amazing thing about the British press was, what were they most saddened about that she couldn't do in life was that she never lived to cancel an Israeli concert, because that's, for the British, that's really their favorite pastime. And we had this week, the state controller came out with a report applying blame on we had a Carmel fire here, right? And it was pretty personal for the first time in our country's history, right? He pointed his finger and he said, the Prime Minister, you have primary responsibility, and Interior Minister, you have primary responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Of course, then they get a month to say, no, say anything. But, the reality, the part of the report that really matters, it's like this high, it's the preliminary report. And it took more trees to make this one report than were lost in the Carmel fire. That's the way these things go. And of course, in the end, within this long report, there was the classic Jewish philosophical question, right? That if a forest burns down and no one lifts a finger to stop it, did it really burn down? But okay, that's for another day. We're here in August, and in August in Israel, it's a popular time to measure the level of the Kinneret, right? Each year, one of our national obsessions is how far down has the Kinneret gone, right? So there's the red line, and then there's the below red line, and then there's the bottom line, and then there's the bottom line. But you know what? It never matters, because each year these numbers change, and what was isn't anymore. That's the way things operate here. Did anyone get to ride the Jerusalem Light Rail? There you go. Very nice. Very nice. And how was it? Crowded. Okay. There you go. Not very quiet, I imagine, because no, not very quiet. It was only quiet because it never ran. That was the big selling feature. But I don't think there's anyone here in this audience old enough to remember the first cancellation of when it was supposed to start running, right? We here in this country, it's lasted a long time. But as was pointed out by Elena, the story of the summer is the protests, right? It actually started with the doctors who were protesting, right? I don't know if you've been following that. So they go on a hunger strike, okay? But of course the Treasury Department was not impressed, Eating hospital food, I'd rather go on a hunger strike myself anyway. And then of course the Edelman, the head of the doctors union, faints, and then of course they can't treat him because they're on strike. It's really a weird situation. And of course the residents are protesting they spend too many hours in the hospital, right? And of course then the social protesters are out there. Well, we need housing, but of course no one has put it together yet that they should obviously put these social protesting types into the residents' housing. At least we'll solve one of the two problems. But this protest is really weird. Have you been to Rothschild and seen it? This is a real whatever. It's a scene you don't want to miss from this summer's trip to Israel. There are like more journalists and celebrities than there are protesters. Everyone wants their 25 minutes of fame or whatever. And of course these protesters have already started subletting their tents out. That was the whole point of it. And even these little things are getting great rents on it. And then so these journalists, they spend a week with this protesting family. Of course, then it turns out it's their family vacation on the Kinneret. The guy's just living in their tent with them, Or they ask the guy in Kiryat Shimona why, because they're all over the country, why you camped out in this park. He says, well, it's cheaper than a Zimmer, It's just sounds good to me, And it's great, the social protest movement, you can do anything with it. Even there's Baruch Marzel out there on Rothschild, social justice and death to the Arabs. It goes well with everything in this country. So, of course, what are their demands? This is sort of this amorphous lot of people, and you don't really know what is it that they want. So they want quality housing in the middle of Tel Aviv. They want social rights for the oppressed. They want world peace. They want snow in August. So finally, when you ask them, what is it that you're ready to give up on? They say, okay, we'll compromise a little on the apartment size in Tel Aviv. But even here, the protesters are not equal, right? Because what's the summer special? For $400, you can fly to London and do your social protesting there. Now, that sounds a lot more civilized than out here in, Beersheba or Ofakim or any of those godforsaken places. So Bibi sends in Emanuel Trachtenberg, the Hebrew University head, to negotiate with these people. Okay. So, he arrives in Beersheba, this is even before yesterday's blow-up. Boom, the Hamas decided to send a bomb when he first got there, shaking everything up. But anyway, he goes on, and the usual story starts droning on and on in regular economics lectures. So sure enough, it wasn't long before all these protesters said, well, we want a summer credit for this course, sitting here with this economics professor. That's about all we want. And it's really affecting everyone, right? This 90-year-old wins the lottery, and sure enough, the next day, his grandson says, well, something happened to my grandfather. I gotta go now, Because, $7 million change anyone from a protester to an apartment owner. And Eli Ishai says, oh, yes, we don't like this swinish capitalism. Our capitalism has to chew its cud and have a cloven hoof, Or before this blow-up, the Defense Department was out there, the desk jockeys saying, the nation demands F-16s. Everyone is using it. It's a classic story on how to turn a particular movement into your advantage, right? How come there are only 3 crime families? We have economic concentration. Anyway, that's this little world, our world out here. Out there in the States, I don't know if you guys saw, Obama went on a bus tour of 3 states. I think it was confusion, delusion, and desperation, but he got on this bus. And nothing speaks to the people about economic prosperity more than a president getting on a bus. That's certainly going to get people moving. And are you ready for this? It wasn't even a Chinese bus, right? It was a Canadian bus. So what sort of patriot is that? And he says, well, the housing market's not going to turn around for at least another year. Well, at least I know 9 people who are interested in his house. He doesn't have much long to go, right? The weird thing about him is that every time he opens his mouth, the world economic value drops about $6 billion, So you would think that, well, maybe he should shut up or something. No, it's not going to happen. So he goes off to Martha's Vineyard yesterday, the usual August story. Anyway, and there's a little fire there, and he says to the Chinese, whoops, there went that 14 trillion. It was in that little safe. But don't worry, we'll pay you back. So they send off Biden to China. Now, of course, we owe them 14 trillion in an apology. It's just not going well Obama, and the Chinese say, well, you shouldn't be squandering your money on your borrowed money on different things. And so, of course, I don't know if you've been following, $75 million was the opening for the Smurfs movie, a real necessity. Anybody here seen any blockbusters this summer? There's the rise of the Planet of the Apes, right? Okay, great. So it's a movie where the apes do well. Are you ready for this? They managed the debt crisis better than Tim Geithner and the rest of the Treasury crew. Yeah, it's really not a good time. They had these huge riots in England. I guess you guys saw that, and it was, they did, there was fighting and throwing rocks and the smashing the windows, and of course they did it the hard way without any soccer, I don't know just how they did it, right? And of course, how do we know it was in England? They did it on the other side of the street. But I think most of them were rioting because it's the end of the Harry Potter series. Anyway, Pinchas Levinson, the Daily Slog, thank you very much.